Welcome to the newspaper review. I am Tony, and I'll be taking you through this segment. First, we'll start with the Punch newspaper. Boldly written, rising fuel prices. NNPC may supply foreign crude to Dangote refinery. You find that on page 2 of the newspaper. On top of the newspaper, debt servicing surpasses capital spending by 3.9 trillion naira in 2 years. You find that on page 33 of the newspaper. Pope warns of regional spillover from Israel-Iran war. You find that on page 31 of the newspaper. FAAC subcommittees get 11.5 billion naira for 2026 budget planning. You find that on page 34 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, battle for PDP. Makinde, Wike comes brace for appeal court verdict today. You find that on page 31 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, 2027, Lagos APC vows to reverse 2023 presidential laws. You find that on page 31 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the matrix, boldly written, OPL 245 disputes resolution will reposition Nigeria's economy, coming from AGF. On top of the newspaper, Customs seeks stakeholders' support towards national single window implementation. You find it on page 3 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, opposition in disarray comments. ADC fires back at Akpabio. NASS 10th Assembly will be remembered as most spineless, compromise legislature in Nigeria's democratic history, coming from ADC. You find that on page 3 of the newspaper. Official, Iran names Khamenei's second son as new supreme leader. You find that on page 2 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Trust. Boldly written, Middle East war pushes up petrol food prices. You find it on page 3 and 4 of the newspaper. On top of the newspaper, many fear death in Adamawa communal clash. You find it on page 7 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, lawyers, ADC to ICPC, charge or release el-rufai. Still in the newspaper, 7 died, 18 injured in Benue, Lagos auto crash. You find that on page 10 of the newspaper. Taraba residents decry high rent. You find it on page 33 of the newspaper. Away from that to the Daily Monitor. Boldly written, why fuel pump prices keeps fluctuating, coming from NMDPRA. Still in the newspaper, UBA Business series to spotlight Africa's new generation of women leaders. Still in the newspaper, teenage pregnancy highest in northern Nigeria. That's a report. We'll move away from that newspaper to the Guardian. Boldly written, shareholders may forfeit dividends as CBN penalties insider abuse. You find it on page 6 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, walk the talk on security emergency. Ndubem tells Tinubu. You find it on page 3 of the newspaper. PDP governors preach peace ahead of appeal court verdict on party leadership. You find it on page 3 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, 2027 polls will be Nigerians against bad leadership, says Obi. You find it on page 7 of the newspaper. Petrol price may hit 1,400 per litre as Dangote refinery loading stalls. You find it on page 6 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, bandits attack Sokoto community as Samvara holds emergency security meeting. You find that on page 30 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Sun. Boldly written, convention, APC governors at war over NWC positions. On top of the newspaper, fear grieves PDP members over leadership as appeal court rules today. Chieftains speak on possibility of party not fielding candidates in 2027 polls. You find it on page 6 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, ex-Lagos local government chief arrests as NDLEA recovers illicit drugs in baby diaper. You find it on page 4 of the newspaper. Nigerian Labour Congress alleges 20 billion naira looting plot in TCN. You find that on page 25 of the newspaper. Editors inaugurate committee on research, training, publications. You find that on page 27 of the newspaper. Recapitalization raise triggers major talks among top banks. You find that on page 2 of the newspaper. Now on the blueprint newspaper, boldly written, it will take hundreds of years to achieve gender equality, coming from United Nations. You find that on page 10 of the newspaper. On top of the newspaper, Zenith, Access, GTCO leads as 30 banks meet CBN capital trade holds. You find that on page 22 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, troops neutralize 45 bandits in Katsina, lose captain, 2 others. Still in the newspaper, Middle East war. Experts predict more money for federal governors as hostilities range. Away from that newspaper to the Vanguard, boldly written, how federal government's 2.3 trillion euros electricity project failed. You find it on page 21 of the newspaper. On top of the newspaper, hope rises for PDP as Benga Hazim's shuttle diplomacy heals breakthrough. You find that on page 8 of the newspaper. Amid terror surge in Kaima, how illegal mining business thrives in Kwara community. You find it on page 11 of the newspaper. Still in the newspaper, State of the Nation, how North has become Nigerians' problem. You find it on page 14 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, 2027 polls, parties scramble to meet Electoral Act deadline. You find that on page 5 of the newspaper. Away from that to the Hope newspaper, boldly written, motorists, commuters grown as fuel sales for 1,100 per litre. Don't create artificial scarcity, although government wants marketers. Price changes driven by market forces, coming from NMDPRA. You find it on page 3 of the newspaper. On top of the newspaper, Tinubu celebrates women's on International Women's Day. You find that on page 3 of the newspaper. Learns their impact on Nigerians' progress. Still in the newspaper, IGP appoints Anthony Plozai as Force New Pro. Still in the newspaper, Mologun of Atire, Oba Adoye, reflects on 4 years of transformative leadership. You find that on page 7 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, gas explosion raises building in Ore. You find it on page 4 and 5 of the newspaper. We've come to the end of this newspaper review. I am Kasitoni. Many thanks for watching. Do well to join us on more breaking news across Nigeria. It is a bye for now.